Welcome to Lemonade Learning, a refreshing look at learning today. We serve up high-impact practical strategies alongside honest and energizing stories to help educators.
Make the most of your moments, lead and learn with purpose, and craft lifetime lemonade from the sweets and sours of education. Join us for a glass.
Hey everybody, it's Bree.
And Lainey, welcome. I'm so excited. Today I get to bring my two storyteller friends together. And so I'm very excited to introduce, we have Barbara Bray with us. I'm going to list just some of her accolades and then she can jump in with more. Barbara, author, podcaster, consultant, difference maker, disruptor. May I add dancing queen? Because Barbara, you and I have danced together in person at CUE. And we've done Zoom dancing. So what else can we add to that?
Co-host Twitter chats, love social media. I'm a mom and a grandma, sister, game player, gardener, writer.
It could go on and on and on. I think.
Yeah, I'm a silly. I mean, the thing that I love is I've learned how, because I'm in several courses on coaching and learn about positivity. I'm trying to turn every moment from, because it can go really negative now. I'm trying to make it so I can look at the, make lemonade out of lemons. Did I say it right?
You did. We're taking those lemons and making lemonade, right?
That's what I'm trying to do right now, is just look at every moment and treasure it.
Yep. Bree, are you okay? We can cut that.
We need to cut that. My dogs went nuts all of a sudden. Sorry about that.
We won't.
I didn't hear a thing.
We won't need to cut it. We're good to go. We're good to go.
Good.
That's too funny.
Good.
This is
raw,
authentic, right? But I could just, I saw it, for those of you listening, I saw her face and I was like, something's happening on Bree's side, but Barbara and I didn't hear anything. So
I think the garbage truck came and it was too much that we couldn't handle. So anyways, well, I was going to say that I think that the underlying element in all of that is that you are like the connector extraordinaire, whether it's content to concept or people or, emotions, any of those kind of things. That's one of the pieces that I've always admired about you, Barbara, and just the way that you find those connecting opportunities to inspire people or to educate people or to empathize with people. I think that that's just so important, and it's certainly something that you have definitely mastered. So hopefully you're going to share some of your secrets with us today as we kind of unpack these moments. So,
that's so sweet. Oh, and Bree, I'm so glad we're connected now. We're connected on social media, but now we can see each other and in Zoom, so it's nice.
I think we need layers of connectivity, right? Like it's like, okay, that's here, but now we're zoomed in, so we can officially say that we're connected and we're legit. Well, how about we start some of these signature stories that you've got and share with us your sweet and your sour. And again, you can, put them in whatever order and any of those kind of pieces, but what's sweet and what's a little bit sour in your world right now?
Well, the sweet is my granddaughter turned 13 and it's been really difficult because of it's all online and everything, but I'm her secret buddy. So we get FaceTime and she's drawing and doing ballet, and the best thing is when she goes, want to FaceTime? I'm like, close everything else. I'm there. And she's just amazing. That to me, knowing that she can tell me anything and I can be there for her. I love it. That's my sweet.
Yes.
But I also, can I say one more sweet? Can I have two?
Absolutely.
Barbara, you're so positive. I'm going to be impressed if you can narrow it to two. So go for it.
Oh, I have a lot because I have lovely children who reach out, but my husband is amazing. And he's taking care of his mom, who's going to be 100 next week. And he's been taking care of her and coming here, going back and forth, mostly there. And he does the shopping. He's just amazing. And we giggle, we play games together. And it wasn't always like that.
That's an important point. I appreciate that. I have your book. I'll hold it up for those who are watching. You can see I just started reading it and there's already like tons of things flagged. And I read in there 45 years. So that was when the book came out, and the book just had its book birthday. So the book is just turned 1, right?
No, he actually, we've been married 50 years.
Oh my God, 50?
50 years this year. Yeah, I was married when I was 12. Yeah, I was really young.
I'm sorry, I did not mean to take down 5 years.
No, that's okay.
Monument. Good for
We
you.
lived in our house 45 years, so that's probably where you saw that at that time. And we love our house, so we've been here a long time. We love our neighborhood. Yeah, but there were some really bad times, and we got through them, and we're stronger now. So the sour is not being able to see anyone. I've been not been, that's been tough to not see my children, not to see my family, not to see friends. But the worst thing was my book came out in February. Well, actually, the worst is the family, not seeing the family and friends. But my book came out February 2020, and I had keynotes and I had workshops and I had book signings all signed up for 6 months, and they all were canceled. And I have to say, I got in a real slump because when you write a book and it comes out and I kind of go, I'm really excited. I can't wait. And then, so things are coming back. I even got a new press release from my publisher, Sarah Thomas, who I love, EduMatch. They're wonderful. But I do have to say that was tough. And I'm not the only author that happened to. So
Nope, not even the only one on this call.
that happened to you, Bree?
No, to Lainey. Oh my goodness, no.
Oh, I mean,
No,
Lainey,
no.
I know. We were talking about that.
Yeah. It was hard. And it's like, no crying on the yacht. I got to write a book. So pretty happy about that. And it was my first book, but it was, I'm with you. It was months of things lined up to share something that I had been working on for 6 years. And it was hard. So I try to I know you're all about positivity. I try to accept that was a bummer, and then try and look to people like you for the positivity and the silver linings, and there will be other things that come from it. And so I'm so excited that so it sounds like you're kind of doing a relaunch. That's very cool.
Well, it was kind of cool. They were offered a marketing company who said they could do a press release, and they said, well, let's try Barbara's book. And so they made a press release, and we're not sure yet what we're going to do with that. But there's some other things that we're looking at too. But Lainey, we were talking about doing a relaunch ourselves together, and I kind of screwed up the date. So maybe we can still do it together.
I think we should. I think we should. COVID authors unite, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I will say that I have not written a book yet, but one of the things that I often hear from authors is that they talk about, you don't write the book because of the money, because of because it's certainly kind of like going into teaching, right? Like nobody signs up for that for all of these massive paychecks. But how, I think that's such a great segue into talking about your book, because you do, such a strong foundation in why. Like, why would you do this? Why would you pour your heart and soul into this book and not, have this measurement, right? Like, we're now all of a sudden, what are you going to get for it? And I think that because we talk about, we don't focus on the what's, we need to focus on the why. The why is what, guides us through this. And, so let's talk about that, looking at that both from, from your lens as an author, as well as educators. We're really close to that 1 year, momentous occasion of COVID. And so I know that that's kind of, a lot of us are still, we're having that kind of come back to us all of a sudden, of this is where we're dealing with all of this again. So let's start with that. Let's start with, when you define your why, what does that look like for you, and how did that inspire you to write this book? I know, we had a little chance to talk before, and you've had lots of life experiences that have definitely shaped who you are, and why you became an educator, and why so many of these things are important to you. So let's hear some of these stories and get to know you better.
Well, my why came through several different doors. uh, I don't know how much you want me to tell, but the main story was I didn't know myself growing up. I didn't believe in me. Mainly because of the teachers I had. I was I started looking at the situation and talked to other people from the school and my sisters. It we were had to be compliant, and I'm not real good at that. And because I kept asking why, I was in trouble a lot. Plus, I might have dyslexia or something. I had some issues with reading, but I was reading to my sisters. I'm the oldest of four girls. But they said I was a problem, and they started tracking me, putting me in really low classes, and I was so bored. It was I'm in therapy right now for some things. And she said, maybe you have ADHD. I go, what are you talking about? I don't, I thought, so, I mean, I'm one of those that am a creative, and all through school, I couldn't figure it out. Moved from Maryland to California and got into a community college where I got the right people who started noticing me and said, "Your writing is great. Share your story. Hey, we have a dance in the quad. Would you like to?" Because they saw me dancing all the time, so I ended up teaching dance to students out in the quad. And I mean, it was I was starting to find me there, but I still didn't know me. And a counselor said, you're doing really well in science, and there's a new program here, dental hygiene. Why don't you apply? And I was getting good grades there. Um, I did. There were 700 applicants, and I got accepted, and there's 18 seats. And if you get accepted, you can't leave because they need the chair to. So I became a dental hygienist. And then I got a house, my income, raising the kids. I wasn't happy, but I loved my patients. I started teaching dental hygiene. I started loving teaching. I started working in the kids' schools, but I like the money. It's like I started doing something that, and I was renting my counselor's story for me. I wasn't living my story. And it was, I can't remember, my daughter was 10, my son was 6, and we were having our house remodeled. And I went out on the deck to get our dog, and I tripped and fell and broke my leg and my neck. Yeah, yeah, it's a little bit of a. So they fused three of my vertebrae, and I was in traction for 4 months, sitting there thinking, what am I doing? I was working in the school with the kids. I had started a little after school computer club. I got my adult learning. I did all these things because it was like, I want to teach, I want to teach, I want to teach. And that's when I decided I need to teach. And I guess the thing is, it's been all along, I still didn't believe in me. I've written 2 other books on personalized learning, and I started with the what, not the why. I mean, the books are great and I loved it, but something was missing. So it took me, I mean, God, I'm really old. Look how long it took me.
You are not. But I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. And I just want to say that I read um your first chapter recently and in your book, and you have lived, Barbara. You have had a life. Like, one chapter does not cover your life experience. I think there needs to be a whole book. But I love it. But I love that this concept of the why. And it's interesting that you didn't start out as an educator. And I wasn't planning on being an educator. Bree had another life before she was an educator. And I think that maybe one common thread that we all three have is that, or at least I know you and I have, Barbara, is that we didn't always have the best experiences in school. We had some tough times. And so um, I think about my own children and my son, and I know in the book you talk about so many interesting things, and this is going to be kind of a random thing to pick up on, but you talk about being a lefty, being left-handed, and
Are
how
you?
I am not, but my father is, and in school they beat him with a ruler to try and get him to switch to right-handed, which is unbelievable to me that that was even possible. And then I was telling Bree, my daughter, who's my oldest, when she was young, I saw left dominance, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe she'll be a lefty. But she's also a big people pleaser. So when she got to school, she became a righty, and so she's a right-handed. But my son, who's my youngest, you're not going to talk him out of anything. That is a very strong-willed person, and so he is a lefty. You're never going to talk him out of it. But it's just so interesting that like we now know better, so we do better, right? Like
Yeah.
it just kind of made me think. It's such a kind of a funny thing to pick up on, but it just kind of made me think about like, what are we maybe still doing in schools that we need to rethink because we're guiding kids based on what we think is the best thing for them. And that right-handed desk you were talking about, they wanted you to be a righty because all the desks were designed for righties, and the scissors are designed for righties. And so it just makes me wonder what in 10 or 20 years we'll look back and go, wow, we really nudged kids for that because that we thought that was so important.
Well, it was about the compliance. It's like, how can you have someone different in a class like that? And I was really different, a lot of things about me. And I was sent to the principal a lot, and I was flat. I had to try my right hand, and I definitely couldn't do it. It's crazy. And just as a note, my husband is a lefty, my son is a lefty, my daughter is right-handed and thinks there's something wrong with her.
Perspective, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm the outlier here. That's so interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want me to go on, there's so much in my life, but it's what I found is when I started in education, and the one thing that was the toughest for me was the prescriptive curriculum. And I was always an outlier as a teacher, and I worked in multiple schools, and the ones that I loved the best were actually in Oakland, but in the the Title I schools, because the kids were so darling and they wanted to learn and they were motivated. But I was the one that, there was a lot of laughing in my class and there was a lot of fun, and it wasn't supposed to be fun, I guess. Um, so anyway, I still fight for fun, making learning fun and making learning so kids are motivated.
I think there's so much in that because I think that, it's the extremes. Either you were really, really good at school and you could think of nothing other than to be that teacher, or you had not great experiences and you want to show that there's another way to do this. And I think that then when you take those two personalities and then you look in the classroom, you see those same personalities come out, right? Like the ones who were really good at school are the ones who crave that structure and crave that, that this is what works because this is what worked for those of us who needed that, kind of mentality and all of that. And it's hard for us to not see another perspective, right? And whereas those who didn't have a great experience, all we've ever known is a different perspective and trying to get that perspective across. And I think that that's one of those pieces that you do such an incredible job of is helping see the multiple perspectives that come into this, right? And from your books around personal learning all the way into this why, right? Like if the what is personal learning, the why has to be empathy and story, right? Because otherwise you can't get to a what until you understand what their perspective is, until you understand what their needs are, until you understand why this is, their motivation or all of those pieces. And so I appreciate you saying, that it took you a while to get there, but at the same time, like you're constantly cultivating your why as you went through your experiences. And I think that that like just adds to a more broad and rich perspective.
Oh, thank you, Bree, because that's kind of, I mean, to me, I feel like empathy and your emotions, social emotional learning, all of those things, we need them more now than ever because of what's going on. And so, um, trying to look at why do we need to keep teaching facts that they can Google? Why do we need to do certain things like test them over and over and over on stuff that doesn't matter? I mean, yeah, I've gotten in trouble a lot because I've told to come in, could you observe what's going on? And then I'll talk to the administrator and they'll say, why are we, tell me why you're still having them do da 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 da, like that. And they go, well, it's required. And I said, why is it required? I have all these why? And they look at me and they're going, I don't know if we can work with this lady because she keeps asking why all the time. But I do have people, administrators and leadership teams that come back and say, when you asked us all those questions, we started reflecting on it. And I have one school, I worked with them 11 years ago. I went to visit the area and they said, you got to come here. You got to come here. Look what we did. We did what you asked us to do 10 years ago. It just took us 10 years. So maybe what we need to do is just plant the seeds.
Yep.
And as teachers, slowly experiment, try some challenging things that you can find, let kids explore their why and their purpose for even being here. Because there's some kids there that don't, I mean, I'm having some teachers and parents call me and say, I'm really worried. My children, there's some that are really depressed and, where they're worried. And I said, we need to pull back and find out and dig deep and find out why they're like that and what we can do to help them so they're motivated.
Yeah.
It's just, and I'm not going to give up. I don't want to lose a child.
No, absolutely not. Okay, so I just have to share this quick little story that last night happened, Barbara, and I thought of you and you too, Bree, because you're always good about encouraging your kids to ask the why. And so my daughter is sitting doing her homework, and it's a worksheet. Okay. And so she's diligently filling it out. I have mentioned this before. My daughter is a people pleaser. She wants to make her teachers happy, so she's doing it. And it's 2 columns and it's work out a math problem. Column 1 is one way to do it. Column 2 is the algorithmic way to do it. And then column 3 is which way do you think worked best? Explain why. And Kendall goes, this column's pointless. Why am I doing this 3rd column? I know which one is best. I don't understand why I have to do this. And I said, well, did your teacher explain why? And she goes, no. And I said, well, let me explain why I think you're supposed to do that 3rd column. And then you can ask your teacher tomorrow. I said, I think that your teacher is trying to understand how you're thinking. And she's trying to make what you're doing visible to her. She wants to know what's in your mind that she cannot see looking at this worksheet. So she just wants to know, what does Kendall think here? And as soon as I said that, she's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And she goes back to just filling it out. And she's like, okay, that's fine. Now, I mean, I don't love that it's a worksheet still, but I actually did like that there was this question in there of like, explain, like justify your choice. Why do you think this is the best route to go? And I was proud of her for asking why. But no one had explained to her the why.
Yeah.
And so I did my best as the parent to say, well, here's what I think your teacher is doing. But I think so many kids have that question, why? They don't necessarily get encouraged to ask it very often.
Well, my granddaughter tells me, why does my teacher make me do all of these things? I said, why don't you ask why? um, I love what you did. That's the greatest example, Lainey. That really is amazing.
Re-encourage.
Yeah, I just love it. I mean, the worksheets, I mean, we did worksheets and I understand them, but there's so many other ways to interact and have kids go in a breakout room and talk and use different tools together and alone and do independent study. I mean, there's so many things. It's just that teachers are overwhelmed.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so I forgive teachers for some of the things they're going through, you
Oh, and
know?
and and I God bless my child's teacher. I hope it doesn't come out the wrong way. She's amazing, and I love
Yeah.
everything they're doing. And so I really appreciate that point of like, let's not, let's remember we're all doing our best. So I want to pull something from the book, but Bree, I want to make sure and give you a chance. Did you want to add anything there?
Well,
My favorite why.
what I was going to say is that I think if we, why, Lainey's heard me say this before, why was my first word and why was basically my kid's first word. And I tell them that's the most important word ever. And if we don't know why, then we can never understand what is happening. And we certainly can't, explain it. We can't justify it. We can't defend it. We have to understand the why. That's not to say that there's not, some snarkiness that comes across whenever people ask why. But I think that, whenever we ask why, I loved your statement in your story about the district, coming back 11 years later and saying like, it just took us some time, because I think that's super important to remember that why is not a fast answer. Like it's not a gut check, like here we go, and whereas what typically is, right? Like what is this, reaction, it's right or wrong, it's black or white, it's, it's got this kind of determination and finality that comes along with it. But why has so much more that comes into it. And I think that, where I was thinking as you guys were discussing the worksheets and all of those pieces, is that oftentimes if we really push enough with our teachers, with our curriculum directors, when we're having those conversations, the why ends up being, why are we doing it this way? Well, because we need, and it becomes like a compliance, or it becomes a data point that we need, or, something like that. And I think that, so often, just like we don't necessarily as teachers explain to our students why they are going to need to know this. A lot of times as administrators, we don't always do a great job of saying why we need this to happen in this way. And that when we don't ask why in the right places at the right times, then we start to lose all of it, right? Like, and so then
Yeah.
that's where it becomes this, well, this is just what we do. And we don't have the clarity and the reason for why that happens. And so I agree. I agree that like we can't pile on to teachers for doing worksheets if they don't know why there's a different direction that they could go, right? And so yeah.
Can I like what you said, but I want to bring up something is I could see if we could have more discussions with the administration, the teachers about the why, not just why because we have to, but why we think you should be doing this. Why do you think we should be doing this? Why not? What would you do different? I mean, my thing is that we don't involve teachers in some of the direction of where we're going. And then the same thing I would do. I think all of us need to be co-learners and co-teachers. And the other is I think when we express a worksheet or whatever, and they say, why do we have to do this? You can say it, but I'd also like them to say, why do you think this would be good? Why not? What would you see? Why aren't we involving all of us as teachers and learners so we can feel like we own it? I could, when I think about myself and the education I had, I didn't own a piece of that learning. I learned more outside of school, and mainly I put a little bit in the book about my mom. My mom was a reporter, and so I learned so much. There was a lot of and she would just she wanted us to be
Yeah.
skeptical about everything and ask questions all the time. And if we didn't ask enough questions, we couldn't sit at the adult table, you know. And so it's being brought up like that. It was amazing, but not all families are like that. So how can we create something like that in
So
a,
I'm totally laughing because I think our family backgrounds are very similar because not because my mom was a reporter, she wasn't, but I was raised to question. Like I was raised in a Lutheran household. Questioning was what we did. Like that was just, and it was not, and I've shared with classmates that I've had, that have known me since I was 5. And I told him, I said, I've come to realize as an adult that not everyone was raised to have conversations and discussions around their beliefs. Like my parents would constantly ask us why we wanted to do something, and we had to justify it to them. Like if we asked if we wanted to go to can I go to the movies? They would say, well, why do you want to go? And it wasn't like why do you want to go? And we couldn't be like, because I want to, right? Like we had to say, because this is, and we had to explain, why. I'm thinking back to this, right before the holidays, and my son is 12, and he was 11 at the time, and he was advocating and has been advocating for a very long time of why he should get a cell phone, right? And so he's telling me, I need to have this, and everybody else has one, and blah, 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 he's giving me all of these typical things. And I'm having this conversation with him, and he was like deeply distraught, and he's just, so he and I, like, we went away, sat in his room, and it's just the two of us having this conversation, very raw, very real. And he's like, you just won't let me have one. And I was like, why do you think I won't? I was like, tell me why you want one. And he's going through all this. And he's like, well, he gives me all these examples of his friends who have them. And I stopped and I said, if you think for 1 second that the fact that 11-year-old boys have a phone is going to convince me that I am looking at this a different way, like you need to come up with a different idea. And so we start having this conversation over justifying, like what does justifying mean and all these things. And I tell him, I was like, you've got to try to convince me. So like, tell me something that is a justifiable, and so we're going through all these different pieces. And finally he comes up with, he gets so upset and he's just like at his wit's end. And he's like, because I want to be able to go to so-and-so's birthday party and not have, because he's always had an iPad. And that's been my conversation with him, is that he can text through iMessages, right? And I'm like, well, tell me why you need something different than what you have. And he was like, because I can't take he's like, my iPad won't fit in my pocket, and I don't want to be the only kid who can't take a picture with my friends whenever we go to this, museum. And I was like, that is a good reason. And so like, we had this conversation about that. And I say that because, in all of these pieces, until we don't get that time, like you were saying, to have people explain and to justify, then they don't know any other way. And I think that's, like, especially from that teacher perspective. And I love that you say that like, we are not asking teachers. And I agree wholeheartedly, like, working, coaching with schools and working with administrators, like that is wholeheartedly a recommendation that certainly needs to be out there all the time. But I also think that, like, for so many times I've sat in there in curriculum meetings and had conversations with teachers and said, like, when we start tearing apart, to look at the pedagogical practice that's going into this and the instruction, and I'd say, okay, well, why are we teaching this? And they're like, because it's in the scope and sequence. And it's like, no. Like, I don't care that it's in the scope and sequence. Like, tell me why you need to teach this. And you were talking about not having having the prescriptive learning. And for so long, that's what we did. And now we've lost a lot of that, right? Because we've just done it because that's what we were supposed to do, and because somebody told us to do it. So, yeah.
well, I'm just going to tell you it. Um, I've been, I am a disruptor that you mentioned, lady. Yeah. And I've had some really good podcasts with different people like Dr. Basil Marin and JT Taylor. We did one on disrupting the status quo. It's time, especially now. We need critical thinkers.
Yes.
We need kids. We stopped teaching certain things. I mean, I think the one place that kids really learned a lot were the life skills when we did cooking and workshops, wood shops and all those things that we used to do, that they had to come up with new things and create them. If it wasn't something that said, well, I want you to make this birdhouse just like this, but if they came up with some things where they were a chef, not a cook. Something where they actually designed something or created a new design or something on their own. And we don't give them time. We're so when I look at what teachers show me that they have to teach, and then they're explaining it and their face turns gray and they're just like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And I said, well, when you're like that and you're teaching like that and the kids are looking at you on Zoom or wherever you're using, what do you think they feel? Because you're not real excited about it either. And so why can't we use this time to really shake up learning?
Yes. So I just have to read this from the book that I already have very marked up, Define Your Why. Page 1. And this book came out February 2020. And having now put a book out there, I know that means that you were done writing this before 2020, right?
Yeah.
In the first paragraph, I feel there is a sense of urgency to rethink the idea of school and what it means to be a teacher, a principal, and a student. Do you feel like there's more urgency now?
Yes. But I've been saying that for so long. I've read, Paulo Freire's and Ivan Ilyich and all of these, Vygotsky, all of the theorists have been saying we can't just sit up there and talk.
Yeah.
We can't, Zoom fatigue is happening because teachers think they're the only ones, the expert in the room. And that means that they're the ones responsible for the learning. And they're getting scared because kids are not showing up or they're bored or they're not doing their job. And I said, why don't we use this time to think about a new way to do this and make it so we're excited again? Because I miss the kids. I just know I watched my kindergarten teachers and a few of them said, come in my room, I'll come in the Zoom and I'll say hi. And I watched them and I can see, some of them are dancing around, trying to be, they got hats on, they're doing all these things. And I think they must be so tired.
They were probably tired before, though. That is just a kindergartner teacher, right?
Yeah. But I think kindergartner teachers, I think that every class can be a kindergarten.
I agree.
And I've done a lot of work with Reggio schools and other types where there's, some of the people I've interviewed on my podcast, like Pam Moran, I don't know if you know Pam, but she was a superintendent in Virginia and telling me about this timeless learning where they had 100 kids in a room and the kids were some of the things they were doing. And another is Darren Elwin. He's a principal in South Dakota, and the kids create their own schedules.
Oh.
It's all personalized. And so he wrote a book called The Revolution with Derek McCoy. There's so many amazing things going on out there that unless teachers can connect to others and administrators open there's so many amazing administrators. Like, I can't name them all, but they're all just out. They're so amazing. The problem is the system is constraining them.
Yeah.
And I say, do one thing. Start with one, and then invite the kids and throw away some of that curriculum and just try it. And Dr. Basil Marin says, do the heart work before the hard work.
Absolutely.
Isn't that beautiful? That was what he said. And my thing is, compassion before compliance. I feel it's really important that we get to know you, build the relationships, show that you care. When you think about the teacher you had, which one do you remember? Is it the one that gave you a lot of worksheets, or is it the one that really got to know you? I want to be that teacher. Isn't that right?
I love it. Yes, I think we all want to be that teacher, right? Sometimes we're just not quite there yet.
Well, one of the wonderful things about why is that why actually, when we look at it and when we deeply examine it, that's how we find our passion. And when we look at those passion points, that's where we get our purpose. And I think that that's one of those things that, like you were saying, if we can just give ourselves time to look at that and to not be so reactive to the what's, and really dig in and find those passion points about why did we become a teacher? Why did we, why do we want to share this content? Why, as an English teacher, like I love everything about English and the English language and literature. And my passion comes across whenever I talk about that. And I want that excitement to be what my kids absorb. And I think that that's what, that's why you got to know your why. And I love you sharing those stories as we come into this.
My main thing is I want people to know that they all have a story to tell. And that was my subtitle, is Own Your Story, so you can live and learn on purpose. And I have chapter 6 is Ikigai. I don't know if you got to that one, but that to me is what I use in my workshops, is how can you find your Ikigai? It's a Japanese concept for the meaning of life, right? It's a meaning, it's your purpose, it's your reason to get out of bed every morning. And a lot of people don't realize that in Japan, they don't have a word for retirement, because you need a purpose no matter how old you are. I mean, think of my mother-in-law. She's going to be 100 next week, and she has problems moving around, but her brain is so amazing, and she still has purpose. It's like, if we can do that, it's all your mind controls you.
Yeah.
And so if we can find that thing that excites us, it's just amazing what life and every day can bring. Look for moments that you can treasure, instead of starting every day, oh my gosh, I do a lot of individual coaching also. And I've had some teachers say, I don't know if I can do this any longer. And I said, hey, let's try to switch that kind of mood and say, I'm excited about today. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I'm looking for those aha moments with the kids. Let's just try that and see what happens. I think it's that attitude of gratitude. We have it, but we've lost it because of COVID and all the other things. And that some people have had terrible things happen. So, for me, it's the connections, like being with you both. I just think you're amazing. I was looking so forward to talking to you and learning about you. And you're going to be on mine podcast, right? Yeah,
Great.
yeah. And so we could just continue our talking. And it just, to me, it's like, every time I have a new connection, I learn something new. I've had few people that have said to me, I've never told anyone this before. And I put on pause and I go, I'm putting this on the internet. I just want to know if you're okay about getting out there for everybody. And when they do, I want them to feel comfortable. But if you have a story, see, I have people say, I'm just a teacher. I go, or they'll say, I don't really have a story. Yes, you do. Everybody has a story.
Yep.
And if you can tell your story, even if it's a poem, even if it's in a song, even if it's a blog post, any way you want, or just share it at a campfire, if you can have a campfire. The thing is, tell your story, because you connect through stories.
Okay, so Barbara, I think I could talk to you for hours, and there's like I didn't even get to like talk about all the things I wanted to talk about with you, but maybe we can talk about it when we're on your podcast. So that would be fun.
Okay.
So but I'm so impressed with the continued positivity that you put out there, and I'm so grateful for your work, and thank you for all you're doing for all educators that get to the grace and joy of working with you, either directly or through social media. And I just kind of want to know, like, what else are you working on? Like, I mean, as if what you said before wasn't enough. What's next for you? Because I feel like there's so someone who's always got like a few things in the pipe. So what's coming up?
Well, one, I'm doing a lot of workshops on personalized learning and the why, and trying to show redefining your why during uncertain times is something I'm doing. I'm even in South by Southwest. I'm a mentor next week, so doing that. And if anyone wants to set up time, and I'm redoing some of the workshops that I did that I have in the book. I'm redoing those as redefining your why. So I'm going to be putting together a toolkit, a why toolkit. I have a why journal that will go along with the book, and I'm working on that. And I'm also writing several children's books. And those are fun because they're all around feelings and the why. So the first one is Emma's feelings journey. And of course, there's a unicorn and it's all in poetry form. So I'm working on that. And then I invite different authors if they want to write one. And so my next one is with Celeste Endo, who's in Hawaii. And she's doing Yuki's Imagination Quilt. And and it's really good. I'm just so excited because the quilt is a blanket, can become anything. And so I talked to my publisher, Sarah Thomas, who's from, with the Edge of Match. And she said, Barbara, this is so cool. It's like the Y series. So I actually am working on an agreement to start my own Y publishing company underneath Edge of Match. And so we're working on an agreement on that right now. And that way, if there's anyone who has a why and wants to, put out a book, and that's what I'm looking at. I mean, yeah, my husband goes, do you ever want to sleep? I mean, this is like crazy. Anyway, so my family thinks I'm nuts, but I love to write and I love to share stories. So and I'm doing a lot of workshops. I have several scheduled and 3 keynotes scheduled, and I'm excited and I can't wait to actually be in person again.
I know. I think we're all looking forward to that and honoring that time more. And I think it'll be different for a while, but once we do get those opportunities to be in person, it's going to be really, really special. And I can't wait to the next time I see both of you in person, give you a very big hug, because that is the thing that I miss the most is real hugs. As much as I love to throw a digital hug, it's just not quite the same. So I'm looking forward to that.
Can I do a Twitter chat? I'm doing that on the why this next time. I have someone, Anna Savino is doing one around beliefs. And then the next one, we're doing one on, I don't know if you know, that SEL Day is Social Emotional Learning Day is March 26th. So on the 22nd, it's a whole day. I'm doing something on that. It's big. I mean, got to do the positive stuff, right?
Absolutely. I love your focus on the positive. And I think that, as you've been talking, like so much has been going in my brain around why do we react the way that we do around the word why? And why do we become so defensive? And instead of like embracing it and being able to have that opportunity to look at this isn't what I have to do. This is what I get to do. This is the opportunity that that I am embracing, and I think it's just so beautiful to keep our minds in that situation, and I was also reflecting on how your book is called Define Your Why, and now amid these uncertain times and these evolving moments that we're in right now, you're encouraging people to redefine your why, and I think that it reminds me, I spend a lot of time talking about when we say share your stories, we emphasize the plurality that comes with that, right? Like you don't just have one story, you have a multitude, and they're constantly changing and evolving, and your why should as well, right? Like you're constantly going to be either exposed to something new, or gaining a new perspective, or meeting someone new, having a new connection, and that's going to bring a different level of commitment or a different level of passion and purpose. And I love that, and I wanted to, it's something that it was really kind of coming to the surface for me when you were sharing all of those elements, that we don't need to be so afraid to be confined by a choice in this one moment. And especially working our way into this anniversary of the pandemic, so many of us, we focused on what are we supposed to do next. And I love your encouragement to think about why instead of just what. So thank you for sharing all of those moments with us, and keeping us, keeping our brains going. So I think we're gonna all have different responses the next time that we chat.
So I want to just give you, on my site, barbarabray.net, I have a tab that says Define Your Why, and I put a lot of resources there, including guiding questions, but I also have, if you want a signed copy, there's a little coupon there. So I just want people to know I do that. But I'm also doing a lot of different Twitter chats. This Sunday, I'm doing one with Teach Pause, which is Craig Shapiro, who is writing a book. I mean, all my friends are writing books. It's amazing. It's wonderful. But I'm doing a thing on the why, and I'm just letting everyone know to bring their baby picture, because there's an activity I'm going to have them do. So, this is just stuff I'm learning, and I want to just kind of explore it with everybody and see what happens. So, oh gosh, I love being with you. We, like you said, Lainey, we could talk all day.
Can I just say that your baby picture is in here? Well, not your baby picture, but a picture from your child is in here. And I just love it. There's so many beautiful ways that you can have, I'll call it teacher presence, but how you can really share yourself with other people. And I think you do that really beautifully. All right.
Thank you.
barbarabray.net. We've got a book, Define Your Why. We've got the podcast, the Twitter chat. I mean, when we asked you, what are you doing? We should just say, what are you not doing? Apparently that would be great.
Well, my Twitter chat is bbray27, just so if they're looking for me.
Okay. And we will put your Twitter handle in a frame around for those who are watching. And then for those who are listening, it will be in the show notes. We'll put all the ways to connect with Barbara. And that's really, really important.
Aww,
We're very happy that you could be here.
Thank you so much. Mm-hmm.
This was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for listening.
If you enjoyed this batch of Lemonade Learning, please check out our website, lemonadelearning.us, for more resources. Be sure to subscribe today so you don't miss out on future lessons, laughter, or lemonade.
And if you're feeling really generous, please go to Apple Podcasts to submit a review so other educators know the value. One last thing, Learning and Lemonade are best together. So please connect with us on social media using the hashtag LemonadeLearning to share your story. Plus, we're always looking to give away stickers and swag.